Hello there, and welcome back to episode 18 of the What Happens Next podcast. I'm your host, Chris Dames. I'm a chartered financial planner, and I help people every day plan for that next stage in their lives, be it retirement or living a life more closely aligned to the dreams that you've always had. And it's interesting because when we're thinking about what happens next, even though money isn't the be-all and end-all, it's something that holds people back from taking that next step. And therefore, getting clear on where we are from a financial perspective is really, really important. And what I want to do is, in today's short podcast episode, is focus on two key questions that you should ask yourself when you're thinking about the next steps in your life. And this is primarily a podcast designed for you if you're in your 50s and 60s and you've been thinking about the next step, what's next in your life. So without further ado, let's explore the two questions.
So in today's video, as I said, I want to talk about the questions that I believe that you should ask yourself to feel immediately better about money. But before we do that, here at What Happens Next, we're on a mission. And that mission is to help you work out what's next in your life. We all reach this time in our lives where we think about what's next and realise that even though what we're doing is probably okay, it might not be the thing we want to do for the next 20 and 30 years. In my experience, that hits when we're in our 50s or 60s and we're considering the next step. But who am I to talk about this sort of stuff? Well, my name's Chris. I'm a chartered financial planner and I run my own business. And even though I'm not at the point where I'm thinking about what happens next, I'm on a mission, as I say, to help people redefine what that next step means to them. And to do that, I want to talk about more than just money. Despite me being a financial planner, I believe it's really important to have a bit more of a nuanced view of what's next in our lives so we can make those really important decisions. If we continuously only talk about the money and not about the money and the role it plays in our lives, we're missing the point, because actually money is a tool to live our lives and not the other way around. So as I say, I'm a chartered financial planner. I've been helping clients for the past 20 odd years work out what's next in their life, help them make really smart financial decisions and support them to live the lives they want using the money they've got. So today, I want to talk about two questions that you should ask yourself that might help you frame money in a different way. And these framing questions are designed to give you a different perspective. We're often, when it comes to money, stuck in our heads. We've got these preconceived ideas about money, and sometimes they stop us looking beyond those preconceived ideas and thinking about what might be possible. So one of these questions is a question you should ask yourself about your money past. And number two is a question that I'd ask yourself about your money present and future. And the question that I'd ask yourself if you're watching this about the past is, what's your money story? Now, I've got to thank the amazing Leslie Thomas for the inspiration for this particular question. Leslie's got a brilliant podcast where she talks about her money story, and I've been a guest on that podcast. And for every single one of her guests, she asks about their money story. And we've all got a money story. It's the story we tell ourselves about money, usually in part inherited from our parents, but in part learnt from the experiences we go through life. But like any story we tell ourselves about our lives, it's in part experience, but in part fiction. You know, it's all stories we tell ourselves have gone through the lens of our own perception, and effectively we imply meaning often with things that don't happen. Now, that can be positive when it comes to money, but it can also hold us back. There's another great book when we're thinking about our own money stories that I only read quite recently, funny enough, called The Secret Language of Money, which talks about not only what money can do for us in a positive way and some of the things that we should consider practically, but also the stories we tell ourselves and what we learn about money at a young age. And why is this important? Well, I think it's important because by exploring some of those stories about guilt, stories about those perceptions that we have about money, we can actually change those perceptions and have a more positive relationship with money. After all, if money is a tool to help us live the lives we want, getting the balance right between how we feel about money. Now, what's your money story is not one of those questions with a definitive answer, and everybody watching this is going to have a different relationship with money based on their money stories. But here's why it's helpful. It's helpful because if you identify what stories you're telling yourself about money, you can actually critically, from a third-party perspective, and I'd be tempted to write these stories down, work out what stories are serving you and what actually aren't. So
at the minute, I'm spending a lot of time writing the What Happens Next book. I'm 50,000 words in as I speak to you today, and currently working to make sure that the book adds as much value as we can to people thinking about that next stage in their lives. Now, the book's not ready yet. It won't be out until sometime in 2025. I'm working hard to get it finished. But what you can do is sign up for the book waiting list, so you're one of the first people that gets access. You can simply do that by visiting whathappensnext.life/book. Join the waiting list today, and you'll be one of the first person to get access to the book and some extra goodies when it comes out.
Work out what your money story is. Work out what stories you tell yourself about money serve you, and work out what stories you tell yourself about money are actually holding you back from the life you want to live now. And the second question that I want to share you is a really interesting one. What's the trade-off you're prepared to make when it comes to money? Now, trade-offs are really interesting, and we make trade-offs every single day. Typically, it's a trade-off between time and money, but think about the trade-offs you make with money every single day. One of my favourite books is a book called Happy Money, and it talks about the fact that one of the things that you can do using the wealth you've accumulated to actually make sure you're happier with the money you've got is spend money on saving yourself time. That might be employing a financial planner so you haven't got to worry about your financial plan, or employing a cleaner, or employing somebody to do your taxes. By delegating the jobs you enjoy, you're effectively using your wealth to buy time back. And typically the trade-offs when it comes to building our own wealth are based on swapping human capital, our time, effort, energy, intelligence, skills for financial capital. That's the way it typically works. We swap that time, effort and energy for earning money. For most of us, that's the way it works. Now, actually that swaps around potentially for some of us because we build assets that then grow, but certainly the trade-offs, there's always a trade-off when we're thinking about this sort of stuff. Your trade-offs will be unique to you, but think about the trade-offs. What are you swapping for that increased level of wealth? And is it a price you're prepared to make? Often when we speak to clients, it's do I carry on working full-time, or do I spend Monday and Tuesdays with the grandkids? Or do I spend more money on a holiday and build those memories, or do I spend it at work? Now, normally those trade-offs aren't quite as finite and aren't quite as black and white, But in the general scheme of things, when you're thinking about how to save, invest, spend and earn your money, thinking about that in terms of what you're getting, but also what you're giving up is an interesting conversation to have with yourself about whether those trade-offs are worth it. And often when we're thinking about generating more wealth, the trade-off is spending time doing what we love and spending time with the people we love and like. But it's interesting, isn't it? I'm a big fan of an aspirational financial goal. I believe they're really important. But if you think about that aspirational financial goal, along with what you're doing along the way to achieve that aspirational financial goal, and whether those trade-offs are worth it, you might look at it from a different perspective. For example, you might be prepared to work less now, have financial independence later, but spend more time doing what you love today. Or you might be happy to work more now and achieve financial independence earlier, knowing that now you're going to have to put the hours in to achieve that quicker. So what that might mean is that you defer the date that you achieve financial independence and think about what happens next, but make a subtle change now, maybe working 3 days a week instead of 5, but doing what you love more today, but understanding that that's going to have an impact. Or it might mean working harder now, saving more and achieving financial independence quicker. Or it might mean something in between. It might mean spending Monday and Tuesday with the grandkids and spending Thursday and Friday working, knowing that actually if financial independence takes a bit longer, you're already getting the balance right between spending time of doing what you love now, but also having an aspirational financial goal of having enough money to do what you want in the future. So what I'm really curious about is what would your answer be to those two questions? What stories do you tell yourself about money? And what ones serve you, do you believe, and don't serve you? And what's the trade-offs for you? Is it just time and money? Or is it something else? I'd love to know your thoughts. And if these questions have sparked some curiosity and you think that these sort of videos are going to help you give you some ideas about what might be next in your life, I'd love for you to like and subscribe today. That's it for today. I'm looking forward to seeing you at the next video, and have a lovely remainder of the day, whatever you're doing.
Part of the issue we've got when we're thinking about what happens next in our lives is having the self-awareness, having the introspection to be able to think about what the gaps in our well-being are. And we're doing loads of work at the minute with what happens next to build solutions that are going to help you think about well-being in a nuanced way when you're thinking about how it applies to your life. One of the first things we've built that you can use today is our What Happens Next quiz. It's free to do, takes about 5 minutes, but what it will do is give you an insight into the areas of strengths when it comes to your well-being and the areas you might want to improve. You can take the What Happens Next quiz at whathappensnext.life/quiz, and I hope it helps you in your journey to work out what happens next for you. So hopefully that was useful, and hopefully those two questions, what's your money story and what trade-offs are you prepared to make when it comes to thinking about money, are going to help you frame the next stage of your life so it's the most successful stage ever. I'd love to know what you're thinking of the podcast too. So email us hello@whathappensnext.live. whathappensnext.life. We'd love to know what you think. And actually, we'd love to know what you're getting the most from the podcast if you've been listening regularly for a while. Because our mission at What Happens Next is to share more insights that are going to be practically useful so that you can live the most successful next chapter of your life. So that's it for this week's episode. Have a lovely week, and we'll see you next week on What Happens Next.